Welcome to Tell Me What You Don't Like About Yourself, a Nip Tuck rewatch podcast where we're looking back at the Rosetta Stone of the Ryan Murphy universe through a rainbow lens with 20 years of hindsight. I'm your host, Amanda, and I'm so happy you're joining me. Let's dig into this one together. In the last episode, we met our core cast, watched Christian and Sean use hams to dispose of a body, and kicked off a rewatch that already has me rethinking everything I felt about the show as a teenager. And now, we're diving into episode 2. We've got identical twins who want to stop being identical, a not date that crashes hard, and Liz Cruz returning to the OR with a double macchiato and zero tolerance for nonsense. Let's go. Today, we'll be talking about episode 2 of Nip Tuck, Mandi/Randi. It was written and directed by Ryan Murphy and originally aired on July 29th, 2003. Episode 2 picks up 6 weeks after the events of the pilot. But make sure you stick around until the end of this episode because I will be breaking down a pilot-adjacent deleted scene. We open in the OR, where we're introduced to Dr. Pendleton, the new full-time McNamara-Troy psychologist. Sean wants him to observe so that he can get a sense of what they do there. Dr. Pendleton, literally rubbing his hands together with glee at the thought, asks if they'll be doing a breast augmentation. Also, just a note, Dr. Pendleton is played by Kevin Chamberlain, who I know is a very well-respected stage and screen actor who's been nominated for several Tonys, and my first thought was, it's Bertram from Jessie! He will also later appear in The Prom, which is another fun little Ryan Murphy connection. Sean explains that they're not performing a breast augmentation today, they're actually correcting one, pro bono. Before the patient's implants could set properly, her abusive boyfriend hit her so hard that they ruptured. He's about to begin the surgery and asks, Liz, how deep is the patient? Except it's not Liz. She quit after the Escobar debacle. The new anesthesiologist tells Sean her name is Marie. Totally off topic, but this reminds me of how Lizzie Borden and her sister would refer to their maid, Bridget, as Maggie, because that was the name of their previous maid. You kind of get the sense that had Marie stuck around, Sean would probably have been referring to her as Liz for quite a while. Sean announces that he's going to begin the surgery by cutting into the nipple, at which point Dr. Pendleton promptly faints. Of course, that's exactly when Christian strolls in, and can't resist a little dig with, good hire, Sean. It's exposition time. Thanks to Sean's new office policies, all patients must be approved by both of them, which brings us to Patients of the Week, identical twins Mandi and Randi. They're tired of no one being able to tell them apart, and they've decided that one will change her face and the other will change her body. In a real 2003 moment, Mandi brought along a photo of Jennifer Garner because she'd like her ears. Mandi and Randi both agree that she kicks ass. This is making me want to rewatch Alias. Sean wants them to see Dr. Pendleton before he'll agree to do the surgery. Christian is happy to report that the twins have their own psychologist, and she's fully on board with their plan. Sean suggests they could try less drastic measures. They insist that they have, but they've never worked. They take this as an opportunity to show off their name tattoos, which, since they're located on their upper butt regions, only work when they're naked. Christian, enjoying tattoo show and tell, tells Sean, God, it's good to be back. We roll right into the opening credits, and they rock. The song is A Perfect Lie, and it's played over super creepy, also brightly lit, which only makes things more unsettling, mannequin-like figures. They're kind of twitching and maybe coming to life. It's really a cool sequence. It will also feel super familiar if you've ever watched an American Horror Story opening credits number, because you can definitely tell that they share DNA. Post-credits, we're at Casa McNamara, and Sean's giving Matt a condom, or a prophylactic, as Sean calls it, because he's such a dad. He tells Matt that he knows Matt's worried that his girlfriend Vanessa will be put off by his uncircumcised penis, but if he discreetly slips this on when the time comes, she'll never even have to see it. That's right. Sean's suggestion is a bit of penis sleight of hand. Sleight of penis? Anyway, this is interrupted by Annie, who asks for Sean's help with something. Julia comes in, and she and Sean exchange very frosty good mornings. Julia asks Annie what she's working on. Annie shows her. It's a missing poster for Frisky. There's the most intentionally overdramatic, ridiculous slow zoom in on Julia's guilty face. On a related note, even though Sean doesn't know this yet, Sean tells Julia that they need to bring a plumber to the house because it smells terrible. Of course, this is because the plumbing system is currently poor Frisky's final resting place. The conversation moves on to the new gift basket business that Julia started with her friend Suzanne, or Crazy Suzanne, as Sean calls her. This turns into a fight about Julia going back to school. Matt thinks that they should go to marriage counseling, but Julia is against it because she thinks it only helps people figure out how to get divorced. Matt feels that at this point, they need to either shit or get off the pot. After this, we see Christian back at his regular tanning salon. After a quote-unquote work-related injury, i.e. Botox to his face and penis, Christian's back on the tanning bed horse. He flirts with the tanning bed lady, and a momentous occasion, I think we get our first Christian sweetheart in this scene. Soon they're getting hot and heavy, actually in a tanning bed. It's hilariously shot. They're both wearing the little goggles, and it's intentionally silly and very fun. Christian's having some, shall we say, downstairs problems, and nothing's really happening. His tanning bed paramour asks if there's something wrong. At this point, he imagines her as Julia, which freaks him out, and Christian gets the hell out of there. Meanwhile, Sean's having lunch with Mandi and Randi's psychologist, Dr. Grace Santiago, who is played by Valerie Cruz. She's explaining all of her reasons that she's pro their surgery. We see their lunch orders. Sean opts for a sea bass and a Pellegrino, I think trying to imply he's a bit boring, whereas Grace orders a hamburger, fries, and a margarita. Sean changes his order and literally says, "I'll have what she's having." Back at the McNamara house, Matt and Vanessa are getting ready to go all the way. Vanessa is played by Kate Mara, who I just have to say here is 100% my favorite Mara. When her sister Rooney's career started taking off, I literally had the attitude of like, but we already have a Mara, as though this was some kind of Highlander, there can be only one situation. Also, Kate Mara somehow looks basically exactly the same now. They're making out, and Matt tries to slip away to put on a condom, but she says that she wants to see it first. Vanessa slips under the covers, and there's a long pause. When she pokes her head back up, she tells Matt, "It looks like a Shar-Pei." She claims that it's not a turnoff, but that maybe they should just stick with making out for today. Back at McNamara Troy, Sean is proudly showing Liz their fancy new coffee machine. We find out that Sean nixed Christian's marble steam room and says he put the money towards something more practical. Liz says it probably cost more than her car. She also says it would have been nice to enjoy a double macchiato between tit jobs. There's a really funny pause, and then Sean goes, "A macchiato, you say?" Sean wants Liz to come back to the practice and offers to double her salary. Liz thinks this sounds suspiciously like hush money. Sean decides to sweeten the pot even more by offering Liz something that she's always wanted: complete health benefits for her partner, Jan, Liz corrects. During this whole scene, Sean is struggling to make the coffee, and Liz eventually takes pity on him and comes over and says that she'll do it. As she's making the coffee, Liz tells Sean that she and Jan broke up. Liz ended things because, after what happened with Escobar, she took stock of their relationship. She realized that she loved her, but she wasn't in love with her anymore. Sean apologizes for putting her in that situation. Liz says it's the best thing that ever happened to her. She's been making a bunch of changes to make her life better. Sean agrees and says it had the same effect on him. He's really changed his outlook. Liz points out there's a big difference between changing your outlook and changing your life. We hard cut to Sean and Julia's bedroom, where Sean's packing a bag and getting ready to leave. He clearly hasn't consulted Julia on this decision at all. He says that they're both miserable, but Julia's content in her misery. He hopes that if they separate, they can find a way to connect again. Julia wants to know if she gets a say in any of this. Sean says she does get a say. If she says she's still in love with him, he'll stay. Julia walks away. We're back at McNamara Troy, and Christian and Sean are getting ready for Mandi and Randi's surgeries. Sean asks Christian if he's ever done twins before. Christian does a silly Sean Connery impersonation and says mother and daughter once, but never twins. Also, make a note of this. It feels like a throwaway joke, but we will come back to it in a future episode. There's an abrupt mood shift here. Sean tells Christian that he left his family the night before, even though he swore he wouldn't turn into his asshole of a father. Christian asks how Julia is handling it, and if they're going to get a divorce, or if it's just another separation. Christian tries to convince Sean that this is a good thing. He's a single doctor now. They head into the OR, where Christian welcomes Liz back. Liz, with a fabulous quote, says, "At double the salary, how could a lady refuse?" Christian is quite surprised by the salary increase, and it's clear that Sean didn't loop him in. Hello there theme. Sean wants to be consulted on everything, but never extends that same courtesy to Christian. We have the Mandi and Randi surgeries, and then we're back at the McNamara house, where Julia and her friend Suzanne are working on their gift baskets. The plumber's been trying to fix the clog, and he comes out and says that he found the problem. He holds up the remains of poor Frisky. We get another ridiculous guilty close-up of Julia. Julia tries to claim that Frisky must have climbed the bowl and accidentally fallen in. I should have checked his name. The actor playing the plumber in this scene is really, really good. The plumber tells Julia that there's no way a gerbil could do that. He also saw a boy's bicycle outside, and he's worried that her son may have done it. He tells Julia, they say Ted Bundy started out this way. Not wanting to let Matt take the fall, Julia admits that it was her. Suzanne tries to give her an out, like, oh, maybe it was an accident and she didn't want her daughter to see. Julia admits it was intentional. At which point the plumber tells her, there'll be no charge. I don't want your money. In the next scene, Christian has brought Matt to a strip club. Christian is this really weird combination of both responsible and irresponsible with Matt. He won't let Matt drink at the club, but he has arranged for him to lose his virginity to one of the dancers. Christian doesn't think Matt has an uncircumcised penis problem. He thinks Matt has a confidence problem. You were timid and embarrassed. She saw that, and it turned her off. Christian tells Matt that women don't really care what you've got going on down there, as long as you know what you're doing. Matt thanks Christian for setting this up, but he doesn't want to cheat on Vanessa, and he also feels entirely creepy about paying someone to pretend to like him. About Vanessa, he tells Christian, I love her. Haven't you ever had that? We get a long, thoughtful, Julia-shaped pause from Christian, and he says, once. When it's clear that Matt doesn't want to take Christian up on his offer, Christian says that's fair enough, but if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go upstairs and pay someone to pretend that they like me. Christian's in the back room of the club now with a dancer named Avanti. She's doing her whole thing, but nothing's really happening, much like we saw at the tanning salon. The dancer asks Christian, what's wrong? You like boys? That's when, also like the tanning salon, Christian imagines Avanti as Julia. Julia as Avanti says, I think you like boys. We're back to Avanti as herself, and really driving the point home, she repeats, I think you like boys. We're going to come back to this in No Hetero, don't worry. But in this moment, Christian's really cruel to Avanti. He throws her off of him and storms out. We're back at McNamara Troy, where Sean and Dr. Pendleton are doing a consult on a guy who hates his small penis and is looking for an enlargement. We get another hard cut to Dr. Pendleton slicing a cucumber in the break room. That's a classic gig. It gets me every time. Sean's filling Christian in and tells him that the guy's penis looks like one of those summer blood sausages that you get in Hickory Farm's Christmas gift sampler basket. They're basically just goofing on the guy and having a good time, but Dr. Pendleton stands up for him and says that they shouldn't be making fun of him. Sean and Dr. Pendleton disagree on whether or not they should perform the surgery. Christian jumps in and wants to know if Sean doesn't want to do it because he finds it personally disturbing. Christian points out that Sean hired Dr. Pendleton to make recommendations just like this one. At the end of the conversation, Dr. Pendleton tells them that he's going to go for a jog. Also, he's been methodically making miso dressing this whole time in this scene, and it's a funny little background detail. Christian asks to join him on his jog. After Dr. Pendleton leaves, Sean gives Christian a major stink eye and says that if Christian has a problem, they should discuss it privately and not in front of their staff. Christian counters that he'd like to be kept informed of staff salary increases. They still disagree about the enlargement surgery because Sean doesn't think it fits in with their new ethics. Christian's fine with following Sean's rules, but they're still running a business. He tells Sean, I'm playing your game, Sean. Once in a while, throw me the goddamn ball. We now get a beachy jogging scene with Christian and Dr. Pendleton jogging along. Christian is trying to ask him about his impotency issue, which we find out Christian's urologist has told him isn't physical. Christian tells Dr. Pendleton about what recently happened with Julia, but he characterizes it as, recently a married woman threw herself at my jock. I passed. And how ever since then he keeps seeing her when he tries to be with someone else. He also lets him know that it's further complicated because she's the wife of a friend. Dr. Pendleton quotes Latin, and Christian's baffled because he was never an altar boy. Given Christian's relationship with religion in the later episodes, this feels like an interesting quote that we'll just sort of make a little note of. But Dr. Pendleton explains that the quote that he said meant, that which nourishes me destroys me. And he lets Christian know that he can either destroy his friendship and nourish his sexual appetite, or he can nourish his friendship and destroy the sexual fantasy by rejecting her. Once he makes this choice, the problem will go away. Christian shows up at Sean and Julia's house, and they're just hanging out together in the kitchen. She asks him if Sean knew that he was dropping by. Christian's all flirty, and should we call him and tell him? Christian apologizes for his inappropriate breast exam in the previous episode. Julia tells him not to because he saved her from an excruciating operation. Julia says she should be apologizing for not calling when he was sick. Christian's a little confused, and then she mentions Bell's palsy. We find out that was what Christian used as an excuse to explain what had happened to his face with the Botox injections from the pilot. Julia starts crying, and Christian assumes it's about the breakdown of her marriage to Sean. But it's not that. She tells Christian she's been kicked out of the kindergarten carpool because the other mothers didn't feel safe trusting their kids with a murderer. Christian is understandably confused and is like, back up, who got killed? And Julia fills him in on what's happened. She thinks she's a terrible person. Christian reassures her that she's not. She just has a history of making bad, if understandable, choices. They sit at the table, and Christian wants to know what happened to the girl he knew. The most confident thing I ever saw, who was, and is, by the way, going back to medical school, who used to sing Fleetwood Mac at the top of her lungs, even though she was tone deaf, who made me forget there was ever another girl in the room. He tells Julia that he misses the way they used to be. He also invites her over for dinner at his place at 7 o'clock the next night. They'll grill steaks and get shit-faced on Merlot. There's a really sweet moment where Christian looks at her and says, "You're still in there. I see it, even if you don't." They hug, and Christian starts really smiling. It's clear his impotence problem is over. Julia notices, and Christian says they'll pick this up again tomorrow night. We're in Matt's room, and he's on his laptop, searching for circumcision, comma. Sean calls and invites him to lunch. Matt tries to put him off. Sean's clearly trying to hold his family together, even though him and Julia might be having problems. Matt says that they'll talk later. Matt dramatically finishes the search box, and it becomes circumcision, comma, how to. Just gonna let you sit with that for a minute. Christian's back at McNamara Troy to check on Mandi and Randi. They're not in their beds. They're curled up together on the floor. Randi's comforting Mandi. A male nurse came in and didn't even notice Mandi. "She's prettier than me now," Mandi says about Randi. To be fair, Randi's face is completely untouched and Mandi's is completely bandaged and bruised. But the twins just want to go back to the way they were. We're back with Sean, and he's having dinner with Grace. Sean's showing off photos of his kids in his actual wallet, because this is 2003 and we don't even have camera phones yet. And yes, we did call them camera phones. Grace jokes if his son is the mailman's, because he looks nothing like Sean. Sean's like, "Yeah, we laugh about that." Yes. Haha. Grace says Annie looks like Sean and that she's beautiful. Sean clearly takes this as a compliment to himself in a way that's kind of cute. He also takes it as an invitation to reach out and touch Grace's ankle. Grace is clearly not interested in this. Sean's terribly embarrassed that he read things wrong because he thought there was a genuine attraction thing going on. It would have been really easy for this to seem like gross and lecherous on Sean's part, but kudos to the writers in Dylan Walsh because it doesn't feel that way at all. It is just very embarrassing for him. Grace leaves and Sean literally puts his head in his hands. It's the next day and we're back in the OR at McNamara Troy. Sean has agreed to operate on penis enlargement guy. They're scrubbing in and Christian wants to know when Sean is going to start dating again. Sean, who is still feeling Grace's rejection, is like, "Dating? Who's dating?" Christian thinks that maybe Sean just needs a jolt. Like, say, finding out Julia's dating again. That might help him get back on the horse. Clearly trying to gauge Sean's reaction, Christian asks if Sean would like to know if Julia were dating again. "Is she?" Sean asks. Christian replies, "How would I know? I'm just musing. Theoretically." Sean tells Christian, "No, I don't want to know if she's dating. I can honestly say that would kill me." Christian wasn't expecting this strong of a response. You can tell that Christian's definitely been approaching this as, "I'll get together with Julia, we'll find Sean a nice new lady, and everybody's going to be happy." Afterwards, Sean sees Dr. Pendleton in the hallway, who congratulates Sean for admitting his mistake and agreeing to operate on small penis guy. Sean fires him on the spot. We're back at the McNamara house, where Matt tells Julia that she looks spiffy. She's heading off for her dinner with Christian, though she claims it's dinner with her friend Suzanne. She's prepping dinner for Matt and Annie and tells Matt to heat it up at 350 for 5 minutes. I don't want to be nitpicky, but literally nothing would heat up if you put it in an oven at 350 for 5 minutes, but that's just me being a cooking nerd. She's getting ready to leave, and she asks Matt not to show Annie The Exorcist again. My favorite line of the week, John Hensley, perfectly deadpan, says, She needs to know that evil exists. As Julie is leaving, Matt asks her for cuticle scissors. We have another long, dramatic pause. Julie asks why he needs them. Long pause. Matt's like, a hangnail, what else? Julia tells him where he can find them, and then blows him a kiss, and Matt catches it. It's very cute. Sean's found Grace at, I think it's supposed to be a hospital she works at, or a hospital that she's consulting in. He admits that he hasn't been on a date since the Reagan administration, and he's bad at it. Who she saw the night before isn't really what he's like. Sean apologizes, but Grace tells him that she doesn't want his apologies. He counters with, then how about a job? Julia arrives at Christian's place, and it's all romantic music and candles. She's digging the vibe, until she turns the corner and Christian's in bed with both Mandi and Randi. Of course, Julia gets upset and leaves. It's written all across Christian's face that he's not happy about what he's done. Christian finds Julia on the beach. He tries to pretend that they said 7:30 for the dinner. He also apologizes for Julia catching him in a double mid moment. Christian tells Julia, but let's not fool ourselves. That's who I am. Always will be. You want a regular Friday night date and a father for your kids? Stay with Sean. Julia wants to know when he became so cruel. This is yet another moment of Christian putting Sean's happiness and well-being above his own. From this scene, Julia walks straight into her bedroom and finds Sean moving his things back in. He says he's realized he's not a single guy who wants a new life. He's a married man who wants to fix his family. Julia wants him out. She doesn't want to deal with his pettiness, his control issues, and his sad, lonely midlife crisis. Julia tells him to get out of her house. Note, she said her house, because she's not selling it and splitting the difference when they get a divorce. Jolie Richardson has a very funny line delivery where she says, "This is not California, buddy. I put you through medical school, and this is all I have to show for it." Sean seems surprised that Julia actually wants to pursue a divorce. Julia's like, "Oh, it'll be great for you. You must be so jealous of Christian. You can screw around." Sean says he doesn't want to screw around. Julia counters with, "Yeah, well maybe I do." Deciding to really hit Sean where it hurts, she says, "You always were a lousy lay." Things escalate from here, and Sean claims that she's either a liar or a really good actress. Things get super racy. It's literally the complete opposite of their sex scene from the pilot. Meanwhile, across their house, and unbeknownst to them, Matt's at Joey's self-circumcision webpage. We're hearing the website narrated by Joey himself, and if the title alone wasn't enough to give you a hint, it's like blaring sirens and red flags and "don't do this, Matt." Joey suggests that you loosen up a little bit first, so we see Matt glugging a couple glasses of red wine. He looks at a photo of Vanessa for courage and then makes his attempt. We don't see anything, it all happens below the frame. We just hear a snipping sound and then see Matt lift his bloody fingers into view, at which point he promptly passes out. And that's a wrap on Mandi/Randi. Welcome to Aftercare, the part of the episode where we talk fashion, queerness, and all of the glossy chaos that makes Nip Tuck what it is. We have a bonus segment this week. I thought it would be fun to take a peek at what was left on the cutting room floor. That's right, we're talking deleted scenes. And this week, they cut a scene that I genuinely think should have stayed. It picks up right after the events of the pilot. Sean and Christian are in a very Florida-y looking bar. Christian tells Sean that he's afraid. Sean tells Christian that they're fine. All threats to their physical safety have either left or are currently being digested by an alligator. Christian's not worried about that. He's afraid about his face. He asks Sean how bad it is. Spoiler alert, it's bad. Sean tells Christian that he'll give him some antitoxin injections to break down the Botox, and he'll be fine in a couple of weeks. Christian wants to know what he's supposed to tell people in the meantime. Cue the perfect timing. A waitress drops off the check, sees Christian's face, and pretty much recoils in horror. "What's wrong with your face, honey?" Sean, without missing a beat, says it's Bell's palsy. After the waitress leaves, Christian asks Sean about Julia. Sean says they'll tell Julia that the stress caused by their work separation caused Christian to develop Bell's palsy, and that Sean felt so guilty he agreed to come back to the practice. Voila, they're back in business. But Christian wants to know about Sean and Julia. Sean, high off the adrenaline of not being murdered, says it was a gift, a wake-up call. He's going to try and make it work at home. Christian points out that it's easy for Sean to call it a gift when he's not the one who got a bunch of Botox shot into his face and penis. Sean, doubling down, says that from now on, he's going to respond to the stimuli in his life. Sean suggests that maybe Christian could be a little less responsive. Christian freezes up and swears, and Sean's worried because he thinks that a cop has just walked in. But it's not that. Christian's just peed his pants. He thinks the Botox has made its way to his bladder. Christian starts crying and asks what they're going to do. The scene closes with Sean making a joke about Christian looking on the bright side because at least he's going to have the genitals of a 20-year-old. And I literally had to stop and write down a note that was just all caps, "Not cool, Sean." The next deleted scene is a phone call that Christian made to his urologist when he's worried that his impotence is related to the Botox injection. We also find out that the way he explained it to his doctor is that a nurse left a Botox syringe uncapped and needle out on a counter, and Christian just leaned into it. There's also a third deleted scene, and it's intercut scenes of Sean making plans to see Grace and Christian making plans to see Julia. And they're kind of cut together where it sort of looks like Sean and Christian are asking each other out on a date. I'm just going to leave that there for you. That's it for the deleted scenes, and we're on to this week's Lou Eyrick Look of the Week, named, of course, for the costume design icon behind Nip Tuck, Glee, American Horror Story, and basically every unforgettable outfit in the Ryan Murphy multiverse. This week's contenders come from the quiet Christian and Julia moment on the beach and feature an unexpected switch in visual language. We've got Christian, usually dressed like a Maxim magazine fever dream, suddenly in flowing monochromatic white, head to toe. It's soft, beachy, angelic even. And then there's Julia, dressed completely in black. Typically, TV costume logic gives way to the good guy. So why is Christian basically dressed like an angel while rejecting Julia? Does this reflect Christian's moment of self-sacrifice? It's a really interesting costume choice. The winner this week? Christian's all-white number. And now it's time for No Hetero, Queer Undertones and Overtones, the segment where we highlight everything in this episode that radiated undeniable queer energy, whether it was intentional, subliminal, or just Ryan Murphy being Ryan Murphy. Now, I want to pause here and say something important. I am not saying that every intense or emotionally rich relationship between men automatically means someone is queer. The idea that emotional intimacy must always be romantic or sexual is rooted in toxic masculinity, and breaking that false association is critical. But in this case, the show itself is inviting this reading. Christian doesn't just have strong feelings for Sean. He orbits him. He defines himself through Sean's approval. He turns down Julia, not to preserve a marriage, but to protect a man who he's emotionally, and maybe romantically, entwined with. And the show, it's going to push that even further in later seasons. But here, in episode 2, the seeds are already planted. Sean, on the other hand, that's more complicated. There's a deep emotional bond, yes, but whether that ever crosses into the romantic or sexual space, it's murkier. It's need, but maybe not desire. This week, I think we have to loop back to the Christian and Avanti scene, with the repetition of, "Do you like boys? I think you like boys." Let's be real. You don't write that dialogue twice unless you want us to hear it loud and clear. Finally, this week's scalpel moment. The scene that cut the deepest, metaphorically or literally. It might be raw emotion, narrative clarity, or just something that made me sit up and say, "Okay, show, you've got my attention." For this section in my notes, I literally just wrote Matt ! Because you know it has to be Matt's attempt at a home circumcision. That is something that once you have seen will haunt you forever. It has definitely haunted me these past 20 years. So yeah, that's definitely our scalpel moment. That's it for this week. Thank you for joining me. You can follow the podcast on Instagram, Threads, and YouTube at Tell Me What You Don't Like Pod for episode updates, behind the scenes content. I made a batch of Nip Tuck cakes that you might want to see on there, and more. Got thoughts, theories, or just need to vent about Christian Troy? Email me at tellmewhatyoudon'tlikepod@gmail.com. Coming up next week, we have Nanette Babcock, and take my word for it, it's a good one. We'll meet back here.